Few weeks till the season starts. Georgia Bulldogs coming off of being the SEC champions, making the playoffs. Looking towards this season, they're hoping to have the same end of the SEC result. Make the SEC championship game, win that, solidify a spot in the playoffs, and then see where they can go from there. We were wondering here, will they repeat as SEC champs? They've made a lot of changes. They crushed it in the transfer portal in the offseason. New quarterback coming in. It's probably for the better based on what we saw at times last season from Carson Beck. Randall, big question. How do you feel about this team repeating as SEC champs?
I feel like when I think about this team repeating as SEC champs, I always got to think about, what does Kirby Smart do? He's won two of the last three SEC championships. DraftKings has Georgia finishing second in the conference. I think they're plus 330 for the year. So I think they have a great shot to end up in Atlanta. I like what they did in the portal, bringing in Josh McCray specifically at the running back position. Big area of opportunity for this team from last season. And so it really just comes down to the schedule.
Yeah, the schedule is huge. They crushed it in the portal, like you said. Josh McCray, big pickup. Before we get into the schedule, I want to talk a little bit about the receivers, because that goes right in line with what they did with Josh McCray. Big room of improvement was that running game, like you mentioned. That wasn't great last season. There was a lot of games where they were struggling in the pass game and they couldn't open it up with the run game. I mean, they looked vulnerable at times last season, and that was a big piece of it. What they did in the portal from the wide receiver position, I think, is even more impressive. That was probably one of the weaker parts of their team last year it didn't go under the radar, because if you watch the games, you saw it. I mean, they led the nation in dropped passes. They were the only team in the SEC to have 3 players drop 5 or more passes on the season.
Yeah.
So it's not even one guy. I mean, there was one guy, I won't name him, who was dropping balls left and right, but it was a lot of the wide receiver core that was having these problems. They bring in Zachariah Branch from USC. They bring in Noah Thomas, the leading receiver from A&M. You mix that with an improving running game, the offense in the portal got better as a whole. Now we can jump into the schedule, but that's a huge piece.
It's a huge piece, right? Because I think when I think about Georgia this year and what they need to do to be successful, it's going to come down to the offense. Like, every year, this defense is good. Yeah. They brought a great linebacker in from Army to help plug and play. They got CJ Allen coming back at the linebacker position. They have KJ Bolden, 59 tackles last year, coming back at the safety position. Like, there's no concerns on this defense. They had a great linebacker core. They could have got a little bit more pass rush, strength from last season. They're going to be missing Jalen Walker there. But on the offense, and the reason I pointed to the running back position was because that was an area of opportunity. They dealt with a lot of injuries to the Robinsons, so that kind of played a role in them not performing as well. But if this Georgia team is going to get back to Atlanta, it's going to come down to what this offense can do. Can they make plays with Noah Thomas? Can they make plays with Zachariah Branch? We can't sleep on Daylen Bell. He's coming back. He's their leading receiver from last season. I think he had about 500, 600 yards from a returning perspective. And they have what I think to be the best tight end duo in the SEC. Got Lawson Lucky, got Oscar Delp. Both these guys, both of them had over 300, 400 yards, a couple touchdowns each. So can they put it together? Can Gunnar Stockton be the guy? Yeah. I think people are overrating. I'm going to go out and say it. They're overrating his running abilities. I think he's a good runner in the sense where he can extend the play. I'm not expecting him to be this rusher where he is, Lenora Sellers, finishing 14th in the conference when it comes to running the football.
Yeah, I think when he came into the games last season, is as sometimes backup quarterbacks do, you're a little bit shakier in the pocket, like you're ready to get out there and do some things. So, and sometimes that's easier to do than making reads if they're looking at certain play calls, like let the guy run. So I think that's probably a good call, that he may be a little overrated on the ground game. When he did come in last season, he was kind of thrown to the wolves in the games that he did play in. He had to play Texas and Notre Dame,
right?
That's his 2 big games. 66% completion percentage in those 2 games combined. He did take 6 sacks, but overall, I think that he'll be able to get it done in the air. I think a big piece of that will be the wide receivers. I don't think he's a top tier SEC quarterback by any means, just from watching last season. He did come into games when he was needed and make things happen. So, I'll give him credit there. It's just yet to be seen. Supporting cast, though, this season is a lot better than what he had last season, even in those games that he came into as the QB2. So really it'll hinge on this offense as a whole, but it'll hinge on his abilities, because they won't be able to have games like they had last year at times with Carson Beck and expect to continue to win. They had a lot of things happen that really fell into place for them, Florida game being one of them last season.
Yeah. And their schedule was really daunting last year. When I looked at the schedule this year, I kind of put it into 3 tiers. Tier 1 is Alabama, Florida, Texas, and Georgia Tech. Those 4 games are going to be pretty major when it comes to them having a shot to make the playoffs. Ole Miss and Auburn. Ole Miss is not scheduled to be as good as they were last year with, returning Jackson Dart and that Trey Harris, the whole receiving core. I put Ole Miss in tier 2. I put Auburn in tier 2. I put Tennessee in tier 2.
Okay.
So I think the schedule plays in their favor, where they have a better shot to return to Atlanta this year than last year. Quarterback position, we don't know. I think there's some upside there. And then I've really studied this roster a lot for people that listen and live in Atlanta. So I'm around dog country all the time. Colby Young didn't play a lot of games last year. Another receiver returning that. He's been looking pretty good in camp. He's looked good spring game. That's another guy who's on the team last year who's going to add some continuity and probably be a big play 6'3" receiver guy. When I think about having all those weapons at receiver, what this schedule looks like I feel like they can beat Florida. They've proven they can beat Texas. They can beat Georgia Tech. I don't really see how it's that hard for them to get to Atlanta. The question is, do they repeat in Atlanta?
Yeah, getting to Atlanta, they have a favorable spot. Like you said, this is not Atlanta-based, but playoff-based. Whether you want the Clemson game from last season on there or not, they don't have that. It's a resume builder. It's also an opportunity for injury, for a loss when it comes to the playoffs. But Kirby hated their schedule last year. He talked about, he's like, we're playing all our tough games on the road, but now Alabama's got to come to town. Florida's always a neutral site. Now Georgia Tech moves to a neutral site this year.
Yeah, they're going to Atlanta. That's gonna be red. That's gonna be red.
Yeah. Georgia Tech, they're right there, but Georgia will be. Yeah. So it's a favorable thing for them. So getting there, can they do it? Yeah. It's going to come down to week 5, big week for it. Playing Alabama, and you're coming off of a bye. You got to be ready for that. If you're Georgia, that game is huge, because for the rest of the season, Alabama at that point too, you're kind of playing similar
the standings
teams.
Game. You're playing the standings game.
Yeah. you're playing Tennessee together. So there's some common opponents that are going to be about there. Yeah, it's a standings game at that point. Then they'll play Texas near the end of the season, which right now is projected to be who their opponent would be if you were betting. They're the 1 and 2 in the SEC for being there. Repeat of last year. Again, came down to the wire in the game last year. Stetson Bennett, Carson Beck, facing injury. I don't want to go back to the Stetson Bennett days, but we get, no. But they get to the end of that game. It could have gone really either way. Texas could have ended up winning that game. Georgia pulled it out. You see that again this year. Will they repeat? I like Georgia to get there. I think repeating again there with how strong this Texas team is, how good an LSU team will be potentially at that point in the season, how good Alabama might be at that point should they be in that game with them. I think it will be hard for Georgia to repeat.
Kirby's been proven year over year to get the most out of his guys, and the most equals usually playing in Atlanta, like 2 of the last 3 championships. But when I look at the field, it's really Georgia versus the field. LSU's got a pretty stacked roster coming back. Bama, all positions, their defense looks better, right? Receivers, they look really, really solid. Quarterback is in the same question mark as Gunnar Stockton. That's another team in the field. You got Florida's in that field. If DJ Lagway can stay healthy, and they play Florida. So, if they get through those 4 teams or those 3 teams in the conference, ask me how I feel in November. It'll be a little bit different than how I feel right now in August. But in August, when I look at the field this year, compared to how normally Georgia is more dominant than their opponents year over year, the field looks good. But I still take them to get on the field in Atlanta, they will be in Atlanta. I'm curious how they do against the field when it comes to winning the SEC championship.
Yeah, and there's a lot of round robin last year. Like this team beats this team, but maybe this team. And there was like coming down to the wire of the season, there was like 7 teams that could have been in Atlanta with like 3 weeks left in the season. Right. I remember we talked about all the different scenarios that could have got teams there. So if there's that this year, you could even see if South Carolina slip in there, Texas A&M slip in there. So there could be anybody. We'll see how we feel when it gets to that point. I like this Georgia team. I think I'm basing that strictly on the offense gets better. The defense is always going to be good. So if they can put it together on the field, then and not have moments like the Kentucky game last year, like the first half of the Alabama game last year,
right?
Then this team will be in Atlanta, and we'll see what happens from there.
I'm right there with you. I mean, last season they had 2 regular season losses. You had Ole Miss, you had Bama. Like it's gonna still there's still gonna be tests there, but I trust this offense will improve. I trust this defense will do what they always do. I don't see Kirby letting these guys drop more than 2 games, and it's going to be up to the field, the rest of the conference, to either step it up and lose or win, not lose more than 1 game, or Georgia's going to be right there knocking on the doorstep. So we want to know what y'all think here. If you're listening, if you're a Dawgs fan, or even if you're a Dawgs hater, or you just generally, you're curious if Georgia will repeat this year in the SEC, let us know. This is the new SEC podcast. I'm Randall Jr. We've got Hunter Ziesman here, and thanks for tuning in.